takes her duties very seriously. But she said a while ago, she's like, "Mummy, please can you not get me any more dolls, because I think I just feel like I have enough responsibility with I think there's 9 of them." But they've kind of come from various, like, my mum gave her a lovely doll, and her cousin gave her one, and she's like, "Oh, they're so lovely, but it's just more children to look after."
And feed and educate.
Feed, exactly. It's
has she chosen the home ed option? Or
I think they're at school. The school of the airing cupboard. It's so funny. Sweet. I had a shock the first time. I was like, "Oh, there's 4 people in this," because they're quite big. So these 4 little things looking at me.
Obviously.
Yes, the large, the older ones. Always cheerful. Things are very much kind of like it's explosive reactions to things, and then it's fine,
reactions.
Like 30 seconds later. But he's very kind of cheerful, happy. I think things.
Sanguine.
Yes, that's it. Sanguine.
Quick reaction.
Yes. But
and then won't hold on to it.
Yes, exactly. He's got a lovely. That is lovely, but. You know, the others, they had sort of mixes of all of them. It was almost like reading him with.
When you're reading
the sanguine, but it's one of those things that I keep thinking, I need to read more about that, and I haven't.
Well, Marita, thanks so much for having us. So this is Marita. Marita's married to Joe, and they've got 4 lovely children. And Marita, I think you've chosen some really fun nicknames for your children.
Yes.
How did you pick them? Fabian's
Bubble, and he's always been Bubble. It's actually been Joe who's had some ridiculous nicknames that he's made up for his siblings, and would say something one day and then it would stick, and then 5 years later we're still calling them the same things. Mim, and you have a Mim. And Laurie is sometimes Gula and sometimes Gargi. He used to say, "I want to go to Ghoul, I want to go on the Ghoul run." And so it was Ghoul, and then it was Gula, and that sticks. And then Ambrose, for some reason, he calls him Gargi. You want to go to where? To seminary. He wants to go to seminary.
Oh, seminary, okay.
Oh. And then Ambrose is Ambrose. Well, I call him Ambrose, but Joe calls him Bob. And he now, initially he was saying, "My name's not Bob Kelly. I'm not called Bob Kelly." And now he just refers to himself as Bob.
That's so funny and really sweet. Yeah, we've come up with some funny nicknames. And when I was brought up, we were really strict on, we had to call the child the whole name.
Oh, really?
So my brother Joseph is Joseph. So when someone called him Joe, I'd think that's like a different name. And so I thought, I'm going to do the same. And I was sort of trying to choose names that were like, they maybe couldn't be shortened so easily. Yeah, we've got a whole mix of nicknames as well.
Joe calls me Pip.
So Marita, where did you grow up? Or would you prefer me to call you Pip?
I was born in Australia, and my parents moved over here when I was about 3. They came over for my dad to start a career as an opera singer. So they emigrated with a 3-year-old, a 2.5-year-old, and a 5-week-old, and got on a plane to London and just sort of. Yeah, because he was a teacher and she was a nurse, so they sort of got jobs, and then he trained to be an opera singer, and so they both had, I was cradle Catholic, and they kind of eventually found the oratory. So my dad sang in the senior choir there, and we sang in the children's choir. So we'd kind of that's where we grew up going to mass, sort of driving into. 3 times a week for choir rehearsals and for singing.
Yeah, it is raining.
It's raining.
Now. Well, we started outside, and that's quite sweet.
Do you want me to carry something? So we have the thing of wanting beautiful long hair, but not liking the
Yeah,
brushing.
I had a big a big battle with Lani. And do you know what saved our relationship? This sounds so silly.
A tangle teaser?
A tangle teaser!
I need to get a tangle teaser, like a good tangle teaser.
That's exactly it.
Yes, yeah, because
It was
you
like
can
night
always
and
tell.
day change.
Oh my gosh, I need to just do that because actually, yeah, the hairbrush we have, it's just like a battle every day, isn't it? It's not nice. Yeah. We don't like it.
You've come to England.
Mhm.
You came in with the 3 children, and you were educated in South London.
Yeah. And then went to St Philomena's in Carshalton again. Sort of ex-convent school. There were a few nuns still there that living there when we were there, but obviously sort of in decline in the terms of the order. And
Did they teach you?
no, they did used to teach, but they were just they had a little cottage, sort of a little house on the grounds, and I think the last one left shortly before Joe started teaching there. So he taught there after he qualified as a teacher. I think second place or so that he worked.
So where did you meet Joe?
I met Joe at a Catholic youth conference, the faith movement.
Oh, yes.
So my brother credits himself with us with
Thank you.
matchmaking. But no, I just really wanted to meet a Catholic. Wanted to find a Catholic man, and went along. Didn't know anyone, and met Joe, and took him a little longer to. Recognise the plan,
Which you had.
which I had.
Interesting that it was important to you to meet a Catholic husband
Yeah.
early on.
Yes.
Your parents were Catholic,
Yep.
and you'd gone through mainstream Catholic schools.
Yes. Then went to
And-
art college, and for quite a few years, I very easily. Sadly, all of my siblings have left, but I think it could have just as easily happened to me. I think it's interesting. I always knew that it was the truth, and I never lost my faith. But I did stop practicing. Well, it's difficult to say. I always went to mass, but I wasn't living I wasn't living my faith. I sort of it was a kind of a very definite decision that right, I need to find a Catholic husband. Prayed about it. Went to the faith movement. They have 2 conferences. They have a summer one and a winter one. Our families knew each other through various connections, just completely coincidentally.
You found out afterwards.
Yeah, so my mum was Joe's older sister's health visitor. And I'd remembered, but way before I met Joe, I remember her coming home and saying, "Oh, I just met this lovely young mum. She's just named her first daughter Blaze. I've never heard it for a girl before." And she's saying, "Yeah, lovely Catholic mum." And then she visited her for her second one and said, "Oh, do you remember that mum? A few years ago I visited her again, and she's just named her second, she's another little girl, and she's called Kateri, and this is my nieces." So it was just one of those very strange coincidental things. I'd never really met lots of young Catholics who were happy to be practicing their faith, and I think that's what I'd hugely missed. I'd wanted to, and over the years been quite demoralised by being in school and thinking, no one goes to mass and no prays the rosary, and knowing that what we were doing was different, but thinking, but this is a Catholic school, what's going on? And I think that was it. That was a very important thing for both of us. When we were thinking about the children, we thought we can't put them in that situation because we both found it very difficult. Well, I know I did. We started going to Black Fen and met the home ed group, and that was we thought, well, yeah, we'll start home educating. Yeah, it was difficult to explain to our families why, and I think for both sides it seemed quite radical what we'd sort of suggested we wanted to do. My mum had a particularly negative experience with home education. She'd been home educated from a young age, and it was very much a kind of retreat from society, and so she understandably had concerns about that, which I think wasn't what we were trying to do. So we started going onto this lovely home ed group, and then Joe's diagnosis happened. I saw so many people doing an amazing job, and but still finding it really hard. I think definitely for us, it was not necessarily because I wanted to do it. It was because I didn't feel that the options were available in terms of school. And also I think at the time I was still working, part-time, but I was still working. So that was a sort of another side to it as well. And I would probably, had things been different, have stopped working and you know, thankfully, you know, my mum was saying, no, you need to kind of carry on with your, you know, keep your qualification, and I'm very glad I listened to her. You don't know the future, but I found it very isolating. Loved the time with the children, but I found it very overwhelming at times. And I think also because of just the pressure of just the domestic life. It was like that I couldn't work out the balance between the home ed side of things and the kind of housekeeping and keeping everything going. I think I found it really, really difficult, the idea of teaching a child to read. I found that very, very hard. Actually, now I'm realising it's not that teaching a child to read is hard, it's that it was particularly hard with the child I was teaching to read. So he just wasn't ready. It was trying to do too much too early, and he wasn't ready for it. So I don't think I had a huge amount of confidence already, but I would have carried on had there not been another option. I think even with that, I saw there were lots of lovely things about it, but it just wasn't, I think, the right fit for us. That sort of cemented things with Joe.
People struggle with whatever it is, whether it's mainstream school or home ed or whatever options they've got for their children. But there isn't necessarily something obvious in front of them, so you can sort of come to the point of where you need to really pray intentionally, maybe. Is that where you came?
The plan was just to carry on with home educating. And I don't think we'd thought beyond primary age or anything. That was just sort of the plan. And then I think Joe sort of found out about this school, and it was this sort of school in Berkshire somewhere, and he's saying, oh, this is great, you know, maybe Fabian could go here for senior years or something. And I was saying, no, my children are never going to boarding school. No way. And obviously we're not moving, so well, that's not going to happen, is it? You know, both our families were 10 minutes away, all the cousins were there. I didn't grow, with both my sets of grandparents being in Australia, I didn't really know my grandparents very well. I wanted them to be close to their aunts and uncles and grandparents and cousins. So moving was never an option. I just thought, no, well, obviously we're not going to move. And Joe didn't really particularly, he hadn't thought about moving either. He was saying, oh, well, you know, this school. So I thought, and that was it. Joe got sick, so that happened very suddenly and was obviously quite shocking at the time. So that sort of completely changed the plan, and it just changed the way we thought about things, because everything was so much more up in the air. And so what had been a kind of, well, you know, something maybe for senior years, we thought quite sort of seriously about the fact that we probably couldn't carry on home educating. So I thought, well, you know, if he's unwell and I have to work, you know, we need to know that their education's going to be okay, and that we need to have a plan that's not necessarily going to be homeschooling. And his health kind of took a quite rapid downhill turn, and he was very unwell for about sort of 3-4 months, pretty much bedbound from complications from his surgery. I think by that point, after his diagnosis, we thought, well, in a couple of years, we'll move to St Michael's, and that was the plan. And then when he got very unwell, we thought, well, we have to do this very soon. And so we put the house on the market, and then we were kind of, we'd sold and we'd moved, and it just happened very, very quickly. I have to say, I still didn't really want to move, even at that point. I thought, we're moving away from all our friends and from, you know, all of these lovely families that we know, all our support networks, and my dad wasn't well, so I thought, oh, that's going to be really hard being further away from him. But it was like, you know, everything just fell into place, and we were here, and it's been amazing. It's just, it's not just that it was a sort of a kind of plan B that we didn't want to do. It was a better fit for us than home educating. The children they love going to school. Their families are kind of completely, you know, we've all got the same aim in mind, and that's heaven. And likewise with all of their teachers, they're, you know, primarily they're thinking about forming them and getting these little souls to heaven, which is just so amazing, and something that neither of us had, and we were aware that we missed, I think. And, you know, just the Catholic culture that they've grown up in, that they are growing up in. It's just such a blessing. It really is.
So they do the rosary, they're going to mass, it's normal now?
And this is just normal. This is just kind of, you know, standard, you know, it's not this perfect sort of, nowhere's perfect. It's not. No, you know, it's not the sort of everything's easy and it's all, but everyone has got the same aim in mind, the same thoughts as to what we're trying to do as parents. And also, I suppose, a bit more of a, that thought's sort of trailed off into nowhere.
Like, it has been worth moving.
Oh my
out of your
goodness, it's
area.
been so worth it. And also, both our families are so supportive as well. They were, even though we're moving an hour and a half away from them, they're both like, yes, move, this is great. And they've both been really sort of, it gives them joy to see the children in that environment as well, and to see them flourishing in that Catholic environment. And it's not been a problem being that much further away. It's only an hour and a half.
Marita, it's really good to hear about this and your path, as it were, because it just goes to another story of somebody who's praying and come to, you know, God has led you to what it is right for your family. It is different for many families.
Yes,
But isn't it great to hear the options?
Yes, exactly.
And that St. Michael's is an option for people who want to
Yeah.
have a full-time Catholic school
Yes.
where the families are practicing their faith.
Supported by the school, supported by the staff, by the other parents. It's just, you know, also an amazing supportive community. And there are actually, you know, there are those who are families who are there whose children they've either left. But the other thing that's amazing is how many of the parents who've gone to St. Michael's, who've wanted to, they've moved away and they've moved back when they've had their families to send their children to the school.
It is good to hear that families around wherever they are in the world struggling, God knows where they are, and God knows. Like our older daughter is at mainstream school, and I know that that's her journey. It's not my favourite, you know, design for whatever reason, you know, for all the different options are out there. But I'm really grateful that the school's there, and it's not that everyone has to home educate and that's the right thing, or everyone has to do schooling and that's the right thing, or hybrid. There are options, there are homeschooling options, there are curriculums. So Marita, would you mind sharing with us a little bit more about Joe and his diagnosis?
Dry lips. Look at your lovely, lovely moisturised lips.
Last episode, I licked my lips so many times.
Really? I'm doing it now.
Just
Right
trying
now.
to lip on.
Yeah, actually. So, yes, you have a plan, don't you, for how things are going to go. And, yeah, you know, if they're married, you know, probably have a big Catholic family, and, you know, things will just sort of go
Home
on.
educate,
Home
because that's what everyone
educate, you
thinks
know,
is the right thing.
Joe's a teacher, and, that's all going well. He loves teaching. And, it didn't, things changed. So when Lawrence was 3 months old, and we had a lovely au pair staying with us at the time. She's a really good friend of ours now. And Joe was exhausted. He'd just come straight home from work. He was very tired at that time.
And what was Joe doing? Was he teaching at the time?
Teaching. He's working at a school in London, a Catholic secondary school in London. Just, quite exhausted. He came home one night and just went straight to bed. I heard him on the baby monitor, and it sort of sounded choking or something. I ran upstairs and found him unconscious and fitting. So, you know, I don't know, I had this strange, this is in the evening, it was about 8 o'clock in the evening. And so found him unconscious, called the ambulance and the paramedic came and sort of, by that stage, it was about an hour later, he'd sort of, he couldn't talk and he was very confused, but he'd sort of, he wasn't unconscious anymore. So the paramedic said, oh, he kind of seems okay now, go to your GP tomorrow. And I was thinking, oh, it's not, he was saying, oh, he was very tired, and I was thinking, oh, you don't have a seizure if you're very tired, that's not normal. So we called some friends of ours the following night, the doctors, and they said, we'll just call you back in 10 minutes. And they called us back and they said, just pack your bags and go straight to A&E, he needs a brain scan. So we went straight down to A&E, and it was awful because the doctor who was in the A&E was actually a friend of Joe's sister, and he had him in very quickly for a CT scan. They couldn't say anything, but he came out and he just looked devastated. And the doctor. He couldn't say anything. He wasn't a neurologist. He said, we're going to have to admit you because they found a shadow in your brain. They sort of sent us home. They were running tests and they said, we need to do more tests, we need to do more tests, we need to send it to be sort of, we need to send a scan to be seen by more senior neurologists. But eventually we were saying, look, what's going on? Because I sort of thought they knew what was going on. And then they said, yep, he's got a brain tumour. The way that it was delivered it was quite stark, because the doctor said, well, you've got a brain tumour. There's not much they can do. If they do surgery, it sort of leaves you, it could leave you completely debilitated. So that's it, and sort of walked out. So we were all just sort of...
So were you there with Joe?
Yeah.
And were you expecting this
Joe's
news
mum
was going to come this day?
We were
So
expecting it, and it was... They'd got to 5 o'clock and then said, look, we'll have to wait till next week. And so we said, look, can someone just sort of say something? It changed over time. So we found out within a month or so that it was a lower grade. It's a malignant brain tumour, but slower growing. So it wasn't one of those fast growing, you know, a year, went home and cried and went to Mass on Sunday and cried. And we just, you know, we had such a lovely, supportive community in the parish that we were going to at the time, and they were just, it was, I think for the next, well, probably from then until now, we were just kind of buoyed by everyone's prayers. And it's shocking for anyone when they're 32 to find out they have a brain tumour, but I think actually it made me far calmer. I think up until that point I was worrying about so much, just worrying every day. And you know when you have these ridiculous worries and you sit and you think, well, that could happen and that could happen. This happened, and I thought, well, I didn't see that one coming, so maybe I shouldn't worry so much. So it took
it's not
something.
all on you.
Yes, I mean it's, you know, I'm not saying that it was just, that's fine, but actually I think it was a very good wake-up call, because I think I'm like to sort of plan things and sort of maybe control things and you know, sort of have an idea of how things will go. And so having a massive spanner in the works like this, it makes you realise that we're not in control of things and we just have to be trusting. And I think maybe some people need a more painful push in that direction than others. One, it makes you appreciate everything you have. It's an amazing thing to have at a young age that acknowledgement of the fact that we're all going to die one day. So it's a gift in some respects to have that perspective, and for us also to have to be more trusting in divine providence. It's not just been that happened and that's easy and we're coping with it, but we had such a huge amount of support and love and prayers, and still do, and I honestly think that's why we can just cope with it every day and the difficulties that have come with that.
Mama, Mummy,
Yes, we got.
let's have some chocolate.
There isn't any chocolate at the moment.
Lollipop.
A lot of complications from the surgery, which required another 3 surgeries, and that was when he was very poorly. And that was very difficult. I think when he was diagnosed, and even when he had the brain surgery and everything, he was very unwell for a good sort of year. And we were trying to, you remember we were doing lots of sort of natural health things, and I think, although I'm sure it all did a lot of good, in a way I think it was trying to control things and thinking, okay, we can do something to fix this. what we were being asked to do was just let go. And I think it's much easier with eventually with the letting go. So he was, doing all sorts of, he had a vegan raw food diet and juicing and those sorts of things. And the tumour just kept growing, and various other, therapies, and it just kept growing. And eventually they said, look, you need to do chemotherapy and radiotherapy. And they said, look, if you don't do it, you're going to die much sooner. And so we thought, okay, we'll do that now. But I think that was sort of, in a way, handing over as well. And that year was a difficult year. He did really well with the chemotherapy. He was staying really upbeat and really positive and joking a lot. And I'd had a miscarriage just at the beginning of that, so just pregnant just before he started all of his treatment. It's amazing. This is our last chance. This is just, I'd never been as pleased as with that time, just because almost with the others it was kind of taken for granted. I think I hadn't particularly been grateful. I'd been very happy, but just sort of, oh yes, that's what I expected to happen. So I saw this as kind of like the last chance. And then I think it was the week before he started chemotherapy, I miscarried. And then he was away because his hospital's near where we used to live. So I couldn't get my head around that for a very long time.
Act 3, scene 1. The lounge.
Too cold in the garden, too hot in the conservatory. This is just right. So Ambrose's birth was quite difficult in that Joe was unconscious. We were in there a long time, and I'd said to the hospital, well, my husband can't be sleep deprived. And they were like, oh, okay, your husband can't be sleep deprived. I was saying, no, he kind of has, he'll have a seizure. And just ended up that we were there for 2 days, and
Ambrose, your 4th.
Yeah, number 4. So
you're sort of presuming it's going to go smoothly?
Well, I've been induced with 3 of them, and then cesarean for 1 of them, just for they all had to be induced early for obstetric cholestasis. It's that kind of liver thing that you get. So
I don't know anyone else that had that.
Ah, have you had that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I had it for 3 of them, but not for Lawrence. Strangely.
I had 2 out of the 5.
Yeah, Lawrence was a cesarean because he was big. So 13 pounds big. 13 pounds. Yep. So we were in there, and it was been there about 2 days, and he was very tired. They got to the point where they said, right, okay, you're ready to push. And then I heard alarms and shouting, and I looked over and thought, oh, Joe's not there. I thought, oh no, he's having a seizure. So he was in the corridor having a seizure.
Whilst you are giving birth?
Yep. And it was, yes, like I said, it was just like, it was very painful lesson that but I think I sort of needed to hear, because I think at that point I thought, it's fine, because he hadn't started his treatment or anything yet. He'd had the brain surgery and hadn't had chemotherapy and radiotherapy, and they kept saying, look, you need to start this at some point. Whereas it was sort of almost a little bit of denial, thinking, no, life is just going to go on as normal for a little bit. It's fine. It's all fine. I can just do everything and control everything, and it'll be fine. And that was just like someone saying, actually, no, you can't. You're on your own. And it was feeling. I felt, humanly speaking, very, very, very alone. But I thought, I know I'm supposed to be relying on God, and I wasn't. And so it was really, really hard, really hard. When I was literally giving birth, he was there, and he didn't know, he regained consciousness, but he didn't know where he was. I was saying, don't worry, we're in the hospital because I'm having Ambrose. And he was like, oh. And I could tell he was thinking, I have no idea what you're talking about. And then I said, don't worry, your parents are going to come and collect you and bring you home. And he said, right, to Kenley. I said, no, we live in Newbury. Newbury? I was thinking, this is not the time, Joe, not the time.
Rita.
But, so it was you, yeah, it was you. Yeah, you. And I think I did need that in a way, because I was so sure that I could sort of just be strong and just do things, and it's fine, we've had these challenges, but if I'm just strong, it's fine and it'll be fine. And that actually wasn't the right, what I was supposed to do. It was letting go and accepting Providence.
We just have to stop and think, like you're saying, lots of times, and it happens, doesn't it? But it's not like what I thought it was going to be.
Yes, exactly. And I think, like I said, other people wouldn't necessarily need that. They'd perhaps be a little bit less stubborn. But I think from the way that I was managing things, I did actually sort of need that sort of painful nudge, and that kind of really like a push to say, no, you need to rely on me. You can't just be thinking that you can control everything, and thinking that you can just be stronger and stronger and then you'll be fine, because I think in a way that can lead to a bit of a hardening and a resentment about the situation. Whereas if you're thinking, I need to just, accept what comes, I feel a lot happier than I did at that point. Even that next year, and I got pregnant very quickly and then lost the baby, and that was just devastating. But also, again, a very important message in letting go and accepting willingly our crosses as well, because they're the ones that are made for you particularly.
I found I've had times of suffering, and my most challenging times, I came to this feeling where I thought, do you know what? Anything, I'll take anything now.
Yeah.
And it's okay. And it's not, in a way, it's almost like a little bit of a numbness to it, but it's more of an acceptance of God's will, and that, okay, wow. I took that's okay, and if that's okay, and I kept coming back to Jesus on the cross and at the top of Calvary. I think of it still daily when I say, that's it, I've had enough, and I've tried to stop saying that so much now, but Jesus never said that, and there is hope, even in death, even in the greatest sufferings, and to the point of death, there is always hope. And then that filters down into when the house is in absolute chaos, and when there's illness, and when there's whatever the challenges are, that there is that acceptance, okay.
We are given what is necessary for us to come closer to God. You can't compare your situation to somebody else's. The children, and we mentioned about miscarriage, it's taken a long time, but to think, I should be so grateful for these four. And I am. That has helped me with that as well. Oh,
Thank you, Marita.
thank you. It's lovely having an uninterrupted chat. Yes.
God bless.